Hello, everyone. Welcome to our usual Sunday afternoon kitchen table talk. This is a man on the street style interview where the street comes to us. So people all across Canada show up here and we talk about issues that we're all dealing with in different ways across the country. And I think it's interesting getting different people's perspective. There's some people here from Ontario. There's some people here from Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, and all out east as well. We've got Nova Scotia and other eastern places, although not as many eastern places. Two from Nova Scotia, right? Max and Nova and Noel. Yeah. So it's a very eclectic group of people, lots of just regular people talking about the crazy stuff we're seeing in Canada. And let's get it right into it because we've been talking for a few minutes in the green room. Chinese interference in our elections. Do you think Justin Trudeau has something to hide? Do you think Katie Telford knows what Justin Trudeau has to hide? What do you think is going on with Chinese interference? One of the things that we haven't talked about or hasn't really been talked about is the down ticket interference, the interference in provincial and municipal and maybe school board too. Scary stuff. MC, what do you think?
Well, it's a little off topic. First of all, I have to apologize for something I said last week, because when we were talking about the Calgary City Council and their law that you have to go to jail and stuff like that, and I very strongly asserted that there's no way that a city council would have that kind of authority. Yep. I went and looked it up in the Alberta Municipal Governance Act, and they actually do.
Wow.
Like municipalities are allowed to send people to jail for a year and give them a $10,000 fine. That's the maximum sentence they're allowed. And I was very surprised because as far as I know, the city doesn't even run any jails, right? Like the provinces and the feds run them. So where are they going to send these people? It's strange, but yeah, I have to apologize for that. And also, Mark, and I noticed that you've kind of been fishing for this all week, so I'm going to just go ahead and I thought, what the heck? And so Mark P, by the power vested in me by forces too mysterious to disclose at this time, I hereby confer on you the title of Special Rapporteur.
Wonderful. I can't wait to use my powers. I'm gonna get started on writing my own mandate. Maybe I'll put it up on CanadaPoly.com. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. I will use these powers bestowed to me.
The Mark Manifesto.
Oh my goodness, no, then they'll call me Diagolon. They'll say, oh, this guy is the second version of Diagolon. He's got a manifesto.
It's Neo-Diagolon. Neo-Diagolon.
Oh no. All right, Bill, what do you think about Chinese interference?
Okay, so we were looking at the numbers in the Edmonton election, and I think I mentioned in the past that anytime that we were at a Mike Nickel event, he had the ethnic community in Edmonton sewn up, like bar none. And
quick question: is he ethnic himself, Mike Nickel? I don't know the name.
He's white dude. He runs a stone cutting outfit or whatever, right?
Okay, so and I just want to make the point here, quick. It doesn't have to be an Asian looking or Chinese person who's taking advantage of this situation. Everybody's saying, oh, you're racist if you want to talk to people who are in the Chinese diaspora. I don't care about Chinese diaspora. Justin Trudeau doesn't look Chinese to me, but he's very, very clearly benefiting from this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he looks pretty Cuban.
Yeah, he had like every inner city business group. He had all the ethnic business groups. They were showing up as things. They were having after parties at their restaurants and all this other stuff after his events. And then
one of the things I think that people getting into politics don't understand is that if you don't have a couple of restaurants on board, a couple of small businesses, a couple of churches, a couple of people who have community, like deep community ties, you're probably not going to break 2,000 votes. Like you need an extra boost in order to win. Anyway, carry on. So he's got, yes, ground game. But he's got all this tied up, you say?
Yes, he had all that tied up. And they were like, you'd go to these things and they were enthusiastic. They were making way more noise than the rest of us were. And then so he wins by twice as many votes. Like it just blew my mind. And then another quick thing with the local elections and everything else, and even all the way up to the federal elections, we have to do our part in supporting the Chinese that are here and all the other ethnic groups that might be getting marginalized by the Stasi or Bolshevik,
Look what happens in BC.
What's that?
BC is a prime example of that. Like the amount of persecution
it's only the Chinese people from Beijing you have to worry about.
Yeah. And that's my point.
Just the Beijing Chinese.
We have to stand behind these people and let them know that we'll fight for them. If, say, some Chinese communist decides that they want to sit there and go after them, then we need to say, there's going to be a whole whack of everybody else who's a regular Canadian who's going to show up and drive your butt out.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
the fact that none of that has happened, the fact that the Chinese police stations have been able to operate
yeah,
with impunity. The RCMP went and walked around one of them, and then
exactly.
the Chinese, the Beijing Chinese, I guess that's what we're calling them now,
Yeah,
the
but that's what I
Beijing
mean.
Chinese
We've
got
got to
upset.
step up, I guess. If the
I
government's
agree.
not on it, then we've got to. Like,
Well, okay, but taking yourself off the board by behaving in a way where the powers that be can say you're a terrorist or you're, whatever,
oh, peacefully,
is not
peacefully
good. Peacefully,
protesting, not
yes.
going out
Yes.
with
Okay.
baseball bats and stuff, right? I'm
Good.
just
All
saying
right.
that we show up en masse to someplace and say, no more of this stuff. You can't bully these people. They're Canadians.
Right.
Well, if you want to do that, there's a place across the sea that you came from that you can do that. And it might sound like, go home or whatever, but that's what it is. If you're a
Well,
Chinese communist and you're trying to bully Canadians and
bring
or
that here. Yeah.
yeah, get out,
Yeah. Yeah,
gone.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And there's a lot of concerning reports talking about people who are dealing with exactly that issue, having intimidation. People show up and pressuring them to behave in a certain way in Canada, despite the fact that they don't have any jurisdiction here. Noel, what do you think?
I'm going down the lines of he's trying to find a way to prorogue Parliament to use his Beijing and CCP and his the Chinese, how he has, right? Because whatever you want to call him, doesn't matter. I really believe that he's trying to find a way to prorogue and use that influence one last time before an inquiry can happen, because he knows that there's going to be more eyes on it, even though David Johnson, which is, you know, a neighbor, a friend, a colleague, maybe even a best friend, maybe even a confidant.
Mentor? Yeah.
Mentor, yes. It'd be hard to say that he's not.
In 2000, in
before he
2006,
before he
David,
can say anything. In
yeah,
2006, yeah.
sorry, 2006, David Johnston went from McGill. Well, I don't know if it was in 2006, went from McGill, but he moved from McGill to University of Waterloo and was instrumental in opening up Confucius centers. I was sharing a link today of Johnston signing the paperwork for opening up Confucius centers, which have been de facto Chinese police stations, right? Like some of the Confucius centers have had concerning dual purposes across the country. So we've got somebody investigating Chinese interference who's opening up Confucius centers in 2006. Color me skeptical. He's a former governor general. He's himself could have been targeted by these Chinese communists. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. How do we know? How are we supposed to believe he's a man of integrity? I mean, come on.
We're being told, just like we were told before,
Safe and
suck it
effective.
up and believe it. 15 days to
flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve, baby.
Right.
And 3 years ago, this weekend, right?
Really?
St. Patrick's.
Holy hell.
3 years ago on St. Patrick's Day, the lockdown in Ontario took effect. They locked down the bars on St. Patrick's Day. I thought to myself, they'll never lock down the bars on St. Patrick's Day. And they effing well did. I couldn't believe that they did, but they did.
Mark, it actually happened the night before.
Oh, yeah.
March 16th. I know this because 3 years ago I was at an establishment in the GTA celebrating my birthday. And at
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And at 6:30, the waitress came to us and said, I hate to try to rush your order, but we're closing the kitchen early today. And my question was, it's 6:30, or is it in preps for St. Patrick's Day? She goes, no, sir. Have you not seen the TV? All bars are supposed to be closed by I think it was 8 o'clock.
Wow.
And we were the last people that they let in, and we kept them there till 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
it was my birthday.
Yeah. Like, all right, we'll stay until close.
and all it was is, it's going to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It'll be okay. So St. Patty's Day was the first closed day, but they closed establishments the night of the 16th. Actually.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was not out for my birthday, and I only found out on the 17th. So
you had insider. That's the only reason I can say that, because I was out for my.
They had it planned, man. They had it tied up.
I know when we first sort of like the first lockdowns in Ontario, because St. Patrick's Day was my father's birthday. So when we're all having like dinner for his birthday, we all, just because we have some family up in Ontario, like, oh shit, they're all in lockdown. Mm-hmm. So then we were wondering, when's it going to hit us? And then it hit us like 2 or 3 days later, like on the Monday.
Yeah, because what I ended up doing is I had time booked off after my birthday. So, and I owned property in Nova Scotia at the time. I hadn't lived here permanently. So I So the wife and I, we packed the car and drove right to Nova Scotia because it's 15 days of flatten the curve. Well, we got 20 days off. We're going to the East Coast.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, Max. It didn't hit.
And then my March break turned into like 3 weeks because there was a time where we weren't even doing online school for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
Well, they had to figure that all out. They didn't even have that yet.
Yeah. The whole thing was a mess. Total disaster.
Still is a mess. There's still people walking around with masks on. There's still people walking around scared, and they don't understand what's happened to them.
I still think it's more complicated than it came from a lab in Wuhan. I don't necessarily. I'm the longer this goes on and the more muddy it gets. I want to stick with China, and we'll come back. But the theory of Ukraine, it was developed in Ukraine, smuggled to Wuhan, and released in the wet market or something. To
like also like maybe Canadian biolabs. Remember how it could have been like Canadian bio? Yeah, Winnipeg.
Yep. What was in that documentation where Trudeau prorogued Parliament? Let's get back to the proroguing.
Yeah.
You were saying that you think he's going to prorogue Parliament. I totally agree with you. I think that he is absolutely looking for an angle to prorogue, and we're probably going to see that Monday, Tuesday. I'm going to predict that we're going to see a
Markstradamus.
Yeah. I think that's what's going to happen Monday, Tuesday. They're going to try and prorogue.
Well,
which is why I think Poilievre needs to get ahead of that and appoint his own special rapporteur.
But he won't, man. He won't.
Yeah, but
I know he won't. He won't.
But David Johnson, like first off, they're beating on an old man. Like you've picked an 81-year-old man. He was 81. In retirement. He was enjoying that Laurentian cottage that's beside your cottage, Trudeau. How dare you?
Him and Sophie were cooking. It's very concerning. Yeah, pulling somebody who's that old. And how can that be justified? He's old with integrity. Well, great, but we don't need that. He's possibly compromised. He's possibly in declining mental state.
Reminds me of Joe Biden.
And nobody's gonna know. Yeah, Joe. Can you imagine Joe's the special rapporteur? Oh my gosh, that would be terrible.
Come on, man.
Nobody did anything. No need for an investigation. Come on, man. Okay, moving on, Max.
Okay, this whole scandal is like the mix between it's a mix between a onion and a hydra. When I first heard of this, somebody described it to me as like this is a can of worms, man. I'm like, no, this is a whole hydra. Because like the moment you cut off one head and you think you might have an answer to your question, you get 10 more. If this has been, it's like if Trudeau's been influenced, how far back does this go? If they're influenced at the federal level, they are most definitely influencing provincial and municipal and school boards. How long have they been doing this for? There's just so many questions.
Well, and there's Confucius in classrooms and in classrooms. Let me qualify that. There's school boards, not just universities that have Confucius centers. There's actual school boards that are actively doing Chinese teaching. I think it's more in BC, but
I know there's some of the universities in Halifax because a buddy of mine goes to one of them and he knows it because he's sort of like me and a little based, so he sees all the shit that goes on there. Yeah. It's like there are just so many questions and the thing is we're not going to get answers because Poilievre was just playing with his fingers all day. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop! You're squandering this. And it's like it's just so much, and I think Trudeau's either going to prorogue or he's going to call an election. Because remember, he did the same thing around the same time in the spring last
2020.
Year. Yeah.
It was August 2020.
If he only calls an election, then that can leave the inquiry open, or if
everything dies.
Yeah, but then
but they could redo it
if he wins, though.
Yeah, but will he do that to risk C11, or can he push C11 through? Push David Johnson off enough and then prorogue in a week if it's still, or 2 weeks if it's still a story. You know what I mean? Like,
because
he doesn't want to lose C11.
Oh, I know. Because my thought is like, if he calls an election and wins the election, then he wins the people. Then in his mind, he has like the will of the people to govern. That's what I was sort of thinking, right? Yeah, in a sort of his head. Because if he pulls the government and the people vote him back in, that's carte blanche, although it does give Pierre a chance to strike. But what'll Pierre do at this point? Because what has Pierre done, really?
So, okay, somebody told me, and I think I told you guys my blue pill battle thing, my blue pill idea. So like in the Matrix, the people who take the blue pill are in the Matrix and they're not interested in getting out of the Matrix. And the people who take the red pill are out of the Matrix and they're with Neo on the Nebuchadnezzar, right? So it was explained to me, somebody said that this theory applies to politics. Basically, we, the electorate, are the problem. Politics is the discussion of how to deal with us, the electorate, the problem. And we're not allowed, we're blue pill. We're not allowed to actually cross over and talk about the politics of it. We can't be red pill. We're just chasing our own tails in blue pill territory. We do what they say, and that's it. And it was some green text I read just before the show, and it's a little less, or a little more pessimistic than I usually like to be. But is there an element of truth to that? Like, the conservatives aren't offering really anything meaningfully different than the liberals, just slower, basically. It's the same thing, but slower. We have to get rid of the gatekeepers to bring more people here, to build more houses for the more people that we're bringing here, right? Like, it just seems the same destruction at a different pace, taking care of us. And so when you say, what has Pierre Poilievre done? He's basically offering the same solutions because it's the same problem, the problem of the electorate, us. And we're not allowed to have input. We're not them. Right? I don't know if there's anything to it, but it explains why he hasn't done anything. Maybe. All right, moving forward. Ron, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Andy.
Will anything happen? I don't know. Can we honestly, like, we've been angling for elections for almost a year now, it seems, right? Like, slowly. Well, I'll give it 8 months.
Will elections change anything though?
Well, can we trust an election? Like,
right,
like,
yeah,
honestly, like, without a full out inquiry, what point is an election? Like, and I know most Canadians are sheep and they probably won't care and they love another election. And as long as they can get the libs out, they'll be happy.
The inquiry also doesn't matter. Look what happened in Nova Scotia.
I was going to say, does an inquiry do anything? Yeah, like
none of the inquiries have. You're right.
Right, and good point, Max. I never bring up the Nova Scotia one, but
nothing happened.
Brenda Lucky interfered, said you can't do that. We're gonna be using this to justify this.
Heads should have rolled.
Oh yeah, like people should have been fired. Nobody did anything, and really, does anybody care? You know, like But it's. Another part of the green text was the point of propaganda, and the point of ruling this way is to humiliate us, the electorate, right? And so that's part of it, right? Having somebody who's obviously not solving the problem, obviously not doing the job well in the role is humiliating. Having somebody who's made mistakes, who normally in the normal course would lose their job, not lose their job, that's humiliating, right? Sending tanks to Ukraine and they use it as a prop for a music video, that's humiliating. They're trying to humiliate us. That's the point.
Well, right? The one tank photo op, yeah, ridiculous.
The one tank, and I heard it was a Russian plane they were loading it onto. I was like, what? It was a Russian carrier, apparently.
Yeah, an Antonov.
I see. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Now, so the other thing about RCMP incompetence, something that happened this week is there's somebody running around Halifax with a fake police car again and trying to pull over young women. And
again,
yeah. Wow, that's happening right now. And they're like, yeah, we don't know. What do you mean you can't find a black car with a set of cherries on top? Like, this is unbelievable. Here we are.
know.
We're less than 2 weeks away from the inquiry report to be released, which is over 3,000 pages, which is going to tell us nothing. It's not going to tell us any of the damn truth. If you want to hear the truth, Paul Pelangio is a investigative reporter down here. He's almost in his 70s. I'm sorry, Paul, if you're only 65, but he is full of the truth of this, and he has been just silenced and squandered away. And man, it's just. The incompetence of the RCMP is by far none top notch for being incompetent.
Yeah. I don't know that
it's also had repercussions in the area, because I know every time there's like something minor that happens. No, I don't know if this is the same for you. Even if it's like the most minor thing, emergency alerts go out. Even if it's the most minor thing, you get an emergency alert.
We're having emergency weather alerts in Ontario for a couple of centimeters of snow.
Yeah, it's like. It's just showing there's so much incompetence.
It's going to be 25
anything but talk
today.
about the Canadian banks.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Bill.
Speaking of the rapporteur or raconteur or whatever, my wife reached out to Poilievre's office and gave him your suggestions, sort of
Oh,
thing.
cool.
And but like I told her, she's posted it to Feces book or everything else she's on too, getting other people to phone him to do the same thing or email him. So it's
Cool.
There's a groundswell, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it would be genius, because if he did that, and I know he won't do it, but if he did it, it would give him something where he could drive the bus, where
Absolutely.
right now he's just responding to everything that Trudeau does. And what Trudeau's doing is appointing his friends and family in a questionable move after questionable move, right? It's just
He's always on the defensive. He's never
Yeah.
on the offensive.
Polyev, yeah, he's on the
Yeah.
Easier to be the opposition than it is to actually drive the bus, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Even if it is a short bus like we've got now in government. But the thing
Indeed.
of it is
Polyev is
he's
like
got to
on
take
the
the bull
ramp.
by the horns. He's got to
Yeah.
show his real leadership. Latitudes
He's doing
are great.
better than the last couple of leaders.
Oh,
Yeah,
in-
but that's not saying a
without
whole
a
lot. That's
doubt.
the
it's not
lowest
saying a
bar.
lot. You're
The
not wrong.
lowest bar.
You're not wrong.
It's like Polyev is like on the ramparts of the fortress when he should be down in the mud making gains, but he's not.
Yep.
And
He
like
should be
he's not
making
even
gains.
doing and he's not even doing a good job being on the defensive. That's the sad part is if you're on the defensive for like a valid purpose and you're doing a good job at it, okay, keep doing that. But like when you have so many opportunities to strike and you're not, that's what is making it, and it's also probably demoralizing the base.
Yeah, well, a little bit. I think, yeah, you're probably right. Okay, Scott.
The China issue, again, it's really interesting in that the majority of Canadians, the majority of Western society doesn't understand our relationship with China. Our relationship with China is we were supposed to infect them with capitalism, democracy. That's why we started doing big time business with them, to infect them, to convert their governmental system into our governmental system, because they were an opposing governmental system. The wall fell between East and West Berlin, so that threat to the capitalistic democracy system disappeared. That left only one threat, and that was the CCP. So by infecting them, by doing business with them, by making it seemingly in their benefit and our benefit, right? What was the consumer going to get? What was the electoral, the voter going to get? They were going to get cheaper goods. Right, but we didn't talk about the fact that within 20 years, majority of our manufacturing would shut down and there would be job losses. We didn't talk about how they weren't playing by the same rules as we were for labor rights, for environmental controls. We didn't talk about any of that.
Well,
because the main thing was to infect China.
Right, but the CCP, what they took from that lesson in the 90s when business started with China and then into the 2000s was that if you had a mix of capitalism and communism, that people really like that, because up to $1 million, you're pretty, unless you're in an important industry. I don't know what an important industry is, spycraft, whatever they can usurp for spycraft. Unless you're in an important industry, you can earn up to $1 million, and the CCP is going to leave you alone. It's a capitalistic society up until a certain point, and most people don't earn that much money.
That's the correct point. Any industry can instantly, like that, be taken over by the government. In this country, you need to go through a whole bunch of burning hoops. You need lawyers, you need court, blah, blah, blah. But in China, the government pushes a button and all that disappears. So it wasn't really much of a success. So that's where we are now. And there's a war because, again, it didn't work. We didn't infect them. We didn't convert them.
Well, no, their system has built-in controls, and the West looked at that and thought, holy smoke, I love that system. I want that system. And the Western leadership is trying to implement this set of controls, this communist set of controls onto our Western system. And
again, we're dealing with a fascist takeover wearing a communist skin suit. The fascism is the melding of government and corporation, and the skin suit is the claim that it's all happening because of human rights for the common good, the majority of people. So to move from that, we have no control over what goes on in China. We have little or no control over what goes on in our own country. So to protest and to worry about things that are going on in China until we actually get to China is kind of a waste of effort. Now to move away from, and there is Chinese influence, and we're not going to do anything about it because it was used to get the people, the puppets in power right now. It was useful to them, so it's going to get buried. And as any tool that helps the existing power structure stay in power, once they pull it out of the toolbox, everybody else wants to use it. That's not going to change because we don't have conservatives running for any government office anywhere. There's no conservatism in Canada. It's just one degree of left to another degree of left. So that remains the same. Chinese influence, that's going to remain the same. Trudeau continually appointing friends of his family and to his cause, that's going to continue because nobody has the power to take it down. So this all continues.
Yes.
What was the other matter that you were just talking about? Also, sorry.
I was going to say there was a bunch, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that's the
Karen,
China story.
Yep. What do you think about? What do you think Telford knows?
She knows a lot, and there is precedent. You pointed it out, I believe, in your show. You showed the clip of her or somebody like her being called to testify before. So there is precedent. And again, this is just the party that's sitting in power, manipulating all the rules and mutating them or breaking them to their own abilities.
Yeah.
Nobody being able to stop them, really, because they're afraid they'll be held to the same light and the same standards.
So one of the things that I think that is being exploited is our immigration standards and our immigration policies to flood specific ridings. Jason talks about this a lot, and he's not here, but he talks about how this impacts elections and how this specifically flipped a couple of seats from conservative to liberal. And so it's interesting that there is so much interference, and we don't seem to have a way out of it. People, even if you are upset about it, there's no real way to address that. And that seems pretty wild to me. I don't know. Peter, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking, Noel's right. Trudeau's racketeur would just put a useless report out, just like the RCMP one and the Rouleau Commission. But if the heat does get too hot for him and he does decide to call an election, there are some possible positive outcomes. First of all the bullshit legislation will die that's on the order paper.
I've been thinking about that too. I would love, and even if the prorogues, all of that stuff on order dies, like it all dies on paper, right? So
apparently, but I read somewhere that heard somewhere that it is possible to haul back legislation after prorogation, and it starts off where it left off.
But really?
That's yeah. I
forget. Well, then that's annoying. Anyway, I appreciate you telling me that because I was operating on.
It was the CCFR. They were talking about it because they were hoping that C-21 would die.
Would kill. Yeah. Okay.
But it's such a clusterfuck. They said that, they can't even do anything with it because it's crap. But anyway, be that as it may. So, that's a positive. And just maybe because it's such high profile with all the Chinese shit, that maybe each riding or people in the provinces will take a very close look at all the funding that's going to go on during an election for the various candidates.
But that's the most insidious part of all this, because Trudeau's going to look at his riding. He's going to look straight into the camera and say, I didn't break any rules. All of that's above board.
But I mean, maybe more people will become scrutineers, not maybe in the official sense, but
but you can scrutiny. Yeah, but you can
they'll start taking a look at the finances because
we already have enough. That's what I'm saying. An inquiry, in my mind, does nothing. We already have enough information that this government
is corrupt. I mean, there's no
looks
doubt.
compromised to me.
It's like we know this is a problem. We know there are many problems.
Yeah,
but we can't do anything about these problems.
We don't need more inquiries. We need action based on this is not appropriate. What's happened already is not appropriate, and we need to get to the bottom of it, but not with these people in charge. Does that make sense? So, and I'm not saying I know who should be put in charge, but I don't believe in being able to investigate yourself and come to an answer that's going to be satisfactory to the electorate, personally. Mark, welcome. How's it going, man? Mark's got his hand up. Yeah.
He's muted.
Yeah, I don't know if he's okay. We'll carry on. Oh, there he is.
Hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Oh, okay. That would be great. It's been a while. I haven't watched your show in a while, but basically, I've been looking into a website called Legal Ibis. That's legal I and then bus.ca. KTT.com. And basically, what they're explaining is that everybody has a trust account with $300 million in it at least. And they show you a way of how to access it.
Bye, Mark. So, there we go. Apologies for the detour. I wasn't sure if he was going to be legit or not. Looks like not. Okay, so what do you guys think about the bank collapse? The SVB Bank, the Silicon Valley Bank, and now the Credit Suisse and the First Republic, and potentially more banks that are imploding, not having enough money, funds, liquid capital to cash people out if they want to get cashed out, and they're underwater because the bonds that they took to offset the loans they were giving at low rates, blah blah blah, are now worthless or underwater by 30%, and so they have to take a bath on all of it, right? So that's not so good. Bill, what do you think?
As much as even talking, about Warren Buffett being brought on board by an inept government, I think that they're not quite as inept as they want to make out to be. I think this is again, just like we did through the COVID, through everything else, the Chinese influence and everything. We've sat back on our hands, parked and carped, but didn't stand up, go out and fight them on our soil. And so now we end up with this. If this goes through and there's enough banks that collapse, and then they can bring out this digital currency, and then we end up with our 15-minute cities, et cetera, we're
so
done.
I was thinking about this morning. If you get a situation where inflation's out of control, you can't raise rates, you can't lower rates, you can't do anything like that, everybody loses everything unless you own it out, unless you own it outright. Right. Could they, and yeah, that would be a carrot and a stick method.
Sure.
And it would look like it's out of the control of the government, but the government and through the Bank of Canada is raising rates to trigger this stuff happening anyway, right? Them raising the rates has gutted the bond market, right?
Yeah.
Is that fundamentally what's gone on? And so,
oh yeah, like my understanding of it, I'm no financial guy, but
they set the stage for this to happen. And now that it's happening, they're going to use it to migrate everybody to you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And they'll say, look at how happy you are owning nothing. Don't worry about not owning anything.
There was an interview that I saw yesterday. The wife sent me, or somebody else sent me, sorry. Edmonton councillors at a 15-minute city meeting, and that, they said, well, somebody asked them about the WEF, and their place in Edmonton City Council and that. And they said, well, no, we don't even know what you're talking about. Don Iveson is a young WEF leader. And he was the mayor here for how many terms? And most of these councillors were in council at that time. Mm-hmm. So they're all lying through their teeth. Like, it's all like, that's where we're going.
Well, there was a Bloomberg was hosting some kind of United Nations mayors online event. Cam Guthrie tweeted it the other day, and there was Bonnie Crombie, and she had one too. And it wasn't Tory because he'd already gone, but like he'd already bowed out. But there were other people talking about this thing. So yeah, I mean, they're all WEF affiliated, United Nations affiliated, globalist affiliated, happening. And it used to be that foreign agreements were negotiated by the federal government, by the prime minister and their representatives. But now it seems like using these corporatizations, there's like the United Nations, like Bloomberg, Bloomberg sponsors this thing, like the WEF, they can get around all of that diplomacy, that procedural stuff, and get to the people like the mayors who are in Guelph. They're reducing the speed limit to 40 unless you're on a main road. It's wild, man. And so like, I think they're going to, factories have robots, right? So if you're in a factory, robots have the right of way, right? So if you're walking around, there's like hard yellow lines basically, and the robots will move through there. And if you're in the way, they're going to get your ankle.
Edmonton has 40-kilometer-an-hour zones for virtually all their suburban stuff.
Yeah, we're going to have
the right of way. and they're bloody trains. So
right, it'll be, but it won't be
that,
trains. It'll be like forklifts. It'll be electric forklift things that are people movers or something like that. And it's like 4 to 5 people per forklift thing. And it'll just go by on 40 kilometers an hour. I don't know if I don't even know if it'll stop. You'll have to like jog up to it and like jump.
they've got multi-seat bicycles that they roll out in the summer here. So that's probably what
those are called trolleys. We have them in Toronto, right?
And they're trying to normalize this as rapid transit or mixed. What is this, mixed transit? It's like, no, I'm walking. This is not mixed transit. This is stop playing with language. Ryan, what do you think, man?
Hey, everybody. Yeah. Janet Yellen was being drilled, asked questions this week. And the one guy, he asked her, well, if more banks start failing, are you going to bail them out too? And she
said yes.
Well, she said yes, if they're one of the big banks, the 5 big banks. These commercial banks, these small commercial banks in the States, they're going to let fail. So they can gather everybody into the big banks.
Consolidation.
Yes, they're going to make people go into these because it's easier for control, easier to get out the CBDCs. And July, that's the Fed coin, the digital coin that's rolling out in July. So they're getting ready to do all this. They're going to collapse the little banks, bring them all into the big banks, and they're going to I think they'll probably take one of the big banks out so they can get the CBDC in. Yes. And then as this is going on, it's going all over the world. For Canada, they're saying already on the legacy parasite media, they're saying that we're going to have a small recession, like a mild recession. They're lying. They're going to start bail-ins. They're going to do the same thing. We got India. They got their digital ruby that's already rolled out. Digital ruby. They're already doing that. The Swiss, what is it? The Swiss,
Credit Suisse.
Yeah, the Credit Suisse, they got bailed out by the Swiss bank, but in 2020, the Swiss bank, they defaulted or lost $130 billion. So how can this bank get this bank out? There's so much going on, but I think that's it's all going into a one world bank. That's what they want, one world. Right? They got to start. This is where it starts. They're getting rid of all the banks and going to one world central digital banks. Yes.
And they'll say your money expires in 2 weeks. You better buy all the food that you can with it because it's going to expire.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. Oh, what a nightmare. So like, is there a way out of this? I'm gonna like, how do you opt out? Where's the checkbox to opt out?
My opinion, there's too many brainwashed people. We're not gonna defeat this. It's all people are going to we're gonna go into these digital currencies because there's too many people out there that rely on this stuff.
So once you're on digital currency, then buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Once people are normalized to digital currency, migrate to Bitcoin.
Gold. Well, you're gonna have both. You're gonna have all 3. You're gonna have all 4. Like people are gonna go into this, but also you're gonna have your Bitcoin. You're gonna have your gold. You're gonna have to go into this. Everybody's gonna go into this because there's I don't know a bigger percentage of the people that don't know what's really going on. So they're going to go into it anyways, right? Yeah. They're going to do it. And that's going to force us to go into it. We have to. And once the governments they're going to give free money out, like, right?
Yeah.
Here's $2,000 a month. You can live. Who's not going to take that, right?
That's just UBI then that opens the gateway.
And that opens the gateway. So, yeah.
I hope you're wrong.
I
agree. Like, I don't see a way to avoid it because of what they're doing. They're setting the stage for this. You know what I mean? They're putting the situation and the criteria in motion to pave the way for pretty much what you're describing. And so I agree with your assessment. I just hope that you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too, but you know what? It's better to be 10 years earlier than 1 second too late. So you got to figure out what you got to do. And
if I was 10 years early, I would have bought a lot of Bitcoin.
Same.
And then I'd own a little island and I'd be like, I don't care what those people do.
I'm not a Bitcoin millionaire.
No, I know. Wow. No. But I mean, I remember I was on Reddit in 2008, and I remember in 2000, probably, I think it was 2011. And some guy, it was on the front page of Reddit, and some guy bought a Domino's pizza with 25 Bitcoin because it was par. And he gave 25 Bitcoin to this Domino's pizza owner. And I thought it was a lark. I thought, man, and I thought idly for about 20 minutes, I wonder how I buy Bitcoin. And I looked at it for not nearly enough time. And then I lost interest, or I had something to do. Somebody, took my attention away. And then I looked up and each Bitcoin was worth $30,000. And I thought, oh, what happened?
I know, right?
So yeah.
Well, and that's one thing with Bitcoin, and that they're trying. Okay, I think it's Chase Bank. They've already said you cannot buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Banks,
China's outlawed it.
Yeah. These banks are starting to say, no, you can't buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So you're going to have only the miners. And if you can find somebody that has Bitcoin to work for, that's how you're going to get your Bitcoin.
Yeah. What a crazy thing. And so the whole Bitcoin thing is just wild. But I think it's going to become more mainstream as time goes forward, and central bank digital currencies become more accepted and widely adopted if that does indeed happen. And again, I'm knocking wood that it doesn't happen, because we do something amazing. Humanity goes, no.
Yeah. There's a lot of people from Silicon Valley Bank. They're buying up Bitcoin right now.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
whatever.
I think it's a lot of people.
They're going, well, we better get into Bitcoin now.
A lot of people view it as a hedge against a currency collapse, because they feel that they'll be able to trade Bitcoin or trade in Bitcoin or trade Bitcoin for goods and services after a currency collapse that retains the value in Bitcoin that would be lost. I mean, the theory's sound, right? Like if you're holding US, or if you're holding Canadian dollars or US dollars, and and you don't hold any stocks and you don't hold anything other than Bitcoin, all of your assets are in Bitcoin, and the stock market goes tits up, and you have Bitcoin at the level of all of your stock investments. I mean, it's a sound theory, but there's a lot of there would take a lot of convincing. A lot of people wouldn't want to take that kind of risk.
They're the ones that are experiencing losing their money. They're seeing it. Until you experience that.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Then you're gonna.
I think people don't believe it will happen either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Thank you, Ryan. Moving on. MC, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I have bad news. Ryan's right. The weird thing, the interesting thing about this is that the bank crash isn't a distraction. This is what it's all about. Like this is the essential part of the plan, right? To centralize all the financial stuff. And like it ties into what I was talking about 1 or 2 weeks ago about like the two biggest credit unions in Alberta merging all of a sudden. And so this is what they want, right? But the thing about it is, when you drive a bunch of people out of the economy with your socialist rules and stuff like that, you end up with an underground economy. Right? Like I was talking to someone from Ukraine actually a few years ago who worked in Ukraine at a big reputable 5-star hotel, right? And they got paid about 10% of their salary in Ukrainian money that was reported to the government, and they paid taxes on and stuff like that. And 90% of their salary was an envelope of American dollars in cash. And right, and that was at a big, reputable, Ukrainian establishment. So people will, everyone will find a way to get done stuff that they need to get done. Like if you want food, you're going to find a way to get food, right? And other people, like maybe you won't get to go on the vacation you want to go on, but eventually when that hotel doesn't have visitors anymore because the government's not allowing it, then you're going to be able to get a room with like I don't know, a silver coin or a couple of steaks or something like that, right? So learn skills and have productive things to offer in your community, and then you'll be okay. I think it's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly elements of that. I hope we don't. Oh man, it's one of those things where it's hard to even fathom going to a barter society. And I mean, like, I know there are modern places in Greece, Macedonia, places where barter is used interchangeably. Places in Greece, things got so expensive with the euro that people couldn't afford anything. So there was a barter society after the switch over from the Greek currency to the euro. People had there was a long period of adjustment, and like this underground economy kind of thrived. People were doing each other's laundry, and like there's lots of that kind of work. So I find it hard to believe, not because I don't see what's going on and not because I find it implausible what you're saying, but it's just that confirmation bias that it hasn't happened and it's, I'm hopeful that we're able to avoid it. I'm really hopeful we're able to avoid it somehow, but it doesn't seem like I agree with you. It doesn't seem like they want to avoid it. The powers that be that are in charge of the bank rates hikes and all of the rest of it, doesn't seem like they want to avoid it. So, are we going headlong into that? I don't disagree. There's a lot of momentum. It looks like we might be. I hope not.
The big kind of monkey wrench in the works is that other thing, that's the other part of the plan besides taking control of the financial system, is wiping out 90% of the population. So when you factor that in, like the people that have self-sufficiency and stuff like that are the people that hate you, right? Or hate the system, right? Like me. And so how do you, like, are they actually interested in targeting that the 10% that remain are going to be friendly to the institutions, or are they just interested in having the control so that they can shut off the food trucks?
The way I heard it, and this is probably just speculation though, is that the jab is supposed to do damage over a longer period of time, long enough to have plausible deniability, but like short enough that within 10 years, it'll be very noticeable type deal. And then when it comes out that this was orchestrated, people will be angry and they'll blame people. But the people who get blamed for it and prosecuted, let's say, for lack of a better term, won't be the people actually responsible. The people actually responsible will fade into the shadows until that burns itself out. You think you've got it all sorted, we've got the people responsible. But by the time it all is said and done, there's going to be a realignment of power. And then somebody shows up with futuristic technology or something needed by that future population from a dump somewhere, right? Like a deep underground bunker, right? And will that population know enough to be wary of that person, right?
Yeah.
And the bet is by them that they won't know enough. And then if you've got a bunker full of true believers, you start embedding your true believers into the new population, and then all of a sudden you've got control.
Subversion.
Yeah, it's a version of the same old con, right?
I don't know. I'm still going to be around. I imagine. Like, I think there's going to be enough people around that are not going to forget about this.
What's your time horizon?
Yeah, well, as long as it takes.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that you're not wrong. I hope I'm the one that's wrong. But I think that it's really, really, like, we don't have Joe Biden's still in the White House. We don't have and it seems like there's all sorts of things that are really obviously like we should really be talking about this. Has there been an Oakes test? Did I miss the Oakes test on the lockdowns or on the
No, it just never happened.
I don't think it ever happened. And so we've got all sorts of legal opinions that just ignore the Oakes test. We'll get to that when we get to it. It's super important. But, I'm going to come to this conclusion because I believe the government that there was a real disease and an emergency. And two, the vaccine's safe and effective. Nobody's gotten to anything like that. What have they done to us? And why? And why are they able to get away with it scot-free without explaining a damn thing to anybody? Pretty wild stuff, man. It's pretty effing crazy if you ask me. And so when I look at that and I think to myself, as long as it takes, could be like not longer than we have because we're going to die in the short term, longer than we have because they will drag their heels until we're good and dead before they even mention anything about answering the questions. Right? I don't know.
They wanted to hide the Pfizer documents for
75 years.
Prime example right there, Mark.
Bam. Nailed it. Okay, Bill. And then Scott. And then I think we're done. My people want to go out. So I'm being told, oh, yeah, we have to go out. So I don't know.
If we unpack everything that we're seeing right now and we travel back in time to, say, pre-communist China, pre-wholesale takeover communist Russia, remember, as Bezmenov said, these guys play the long game. We work in 4-year chunks.
Yep.
You work in decades or millennia even, right?
Or more. Yep.
Absolutely. The useful idiots. Useful idiots are always the first ones taken to the wall when they have a complete takeover. They purge what they need to take out, because you got to remember, you're dealing with psychopaths here. You're not dealing with people that care about people. They care about their system and themselves.
Yeah, and when you talk about psychopaths and people, like some people think like Mike Myers or like somebody who's kind of kooky and crazy and
think about Trudeau.
You're talking surgical. You're talking
Absolutely.
Like you're talking this person looks at this purely as a numbers game and you're on this side of the equation, and sorry, buddy, and there's nothing behind those eyes. Like
Remember,
this is
Trudeau said he was born into this when he was dancing with Sophie there, and they had that carefully scripted little thing.
Be humble.
They're the new royalty, or so they think. And they honestly believe they have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And like, well, okay. And even as far as, say, the whole trade thing, this, that, the other thing, you don't have to go any further. Like, I've never set foot in Cuba, and I never will until they actually free that place. Which means I probably will never will. But I talk to people that go over, and then they say, well, what do you think? Should I take more toilet paper over and toe clippers and a few other odds and ends? Because that's what people that go over there tell me that they really need. So the people working inside the resorts, and again, I've never been there, so I don't know, will prostitute themselves for a bloody roll of toilet paper, just like they do in Venezuela and everything else. If we're going to sit there and figure for a minute that we're not going to be able to fight our way out of this, and I'm not condoning taking up arms and doing this and doing that, but I'm saying we have to do our part at every level to stop this, because if it comes in, we're toast.
It's going to be very difficult to unseat. Yeah. There were people who were saying that they were going to protest Trump being arrested by taking their money out of the bank. And
that's maybe a good
that's hilarious. Yeah.
I don't know, because they'll collapse it and just exacerbate the situation.
It makes it worse. I know, it accelerates it, right? So what happens then?
Like,
yeah, that's exactly what I said.
All the controls. So
yeah, so I mean, it all plays into their hands. So we have to be very careful. And I mean, like, you don't want to be the bull that's reacting to the red cape being, like toroed in your face.
Tact is required,
because you're the one that ends up getting skewered. So
that's right. And taking yourself off the board does not make sense, right? You can't.
Action. There's all sorts of ways of well, look what happened in some of these communist countries. All the underground actions, counterinsurgency, etc. I can go there either, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way. That's the only thing we got.
Yep. Well, hopefully we figure it out. Hopefully we avoid all of this. Fingers crossed. Scott, and then Ryan, and then we're done. Go ahead, Scott.
The concerns about population control through COVID, I find that kind of questionable, because where was COVID vaccine pushed the hardest? The Western nations, the nations that already had dramatic decline in population.
Mm-hmm.
And any country that is of mixed political genders, where you have males and females controlling political parties, they're the ones where the populations are declining. They're the ones where COVID was pushed the hardest. In countries such as the theocracy in the Middle East and in African countries, which are very much male dominated, the birth rates continue to rise, and COVID is not that much of a problem. So it's interesting saying that COVID was used to control our populations. The whole problem with COVID is we threw the merit system out the window on it. We used to test things on humans before we gave them to large numbers of them, and they didn't this time. So you've got to ask yourself, was it to F up the population, or was it because these guys are so stupid? A combination of both. A combination of both, I think.
Yeah,
It offered control.
I certainly don't know the answer. And people say how many, millions of people have had this vaccine and you're not seeing a mass die-off effect right now. Fair enough. All that makes sense. But I've never seen an NFL player have a heart attack on the
There's
field.
a lot of illness.
There's so many things. And I mean, like the higher rates of death, the mortality.
If it had been tested for 3 years, it would have never been released.
It would have never been released. No. Never. And the fact that they're still pushing it in Canada is a very interesting thing to note. So it's
we're only a year or two of it. Wait till 10 years down the road.
You're not wrong, buddy. I hope we did, and how is that tolerable? How can we, and I mean, even at this point in time, how is it tolerable that our medical, our public health, all of that stuff is still pushing this nonsense when we know that there's problems with it? It's wild. We wouldn't make people eat lettuce with listeria in it, right? Does lettuce have listeria with E. coli? Right.
I just wanted to say a statement, like something to think about is the one world everything, like one world religion, one world digital currencies, one world health system. But you think about one world robot military. What do they want a one world robot military for if we're one world, right? It's not because of aliens. It's not,
isn't.
It's gonna be because of the people that want out of this.
Yeah, they want freedom. They want to maintain their freedom. Yeah, I agree with you. All right, well, that's a good
place. This is the white pill, though, Mark. Like, I want to say, like, I know sometimes we get kind of doom and gloomy, but the fact that we got 10 people in this room aware of what's going on and we're having a casual conversation, I think it's probably more enlightening to people than we know. And I think it's definitely the white pill. You're definitely a white pill in a dark world some days, Mark.
A little bit of hope. I hope so, and I hope that being able to publish this, and I hope the conversation is enlightening to some people, or just entertaining anyway, to hear what other people think about what's going on, and to hear kind of the rumors and the scuttlebutt, because that's what people hear, and so it's interesting to me to talk about it. Thank you guys so much for showing up, and Gal, and everyone for showing up to hang out and contribute, and for everybody watching. We will catch you next time. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, Mark.